Welcome into the Kings Beat podcast. I'm James Hammond, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We are a Blue Wire podcast, and joining me today, of course, is Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I'm great. I'm good. I'm ready to go. I wasn't about 13 seconds ago. I had a whole bunch of fucking chaos just breaking out in front of me, but I'm ready now. I'm ready to do this.
Sean
And
dropping an F-bomb in the first 23 seconds of the
sorry,
podcast.
sorry. By the way, I mean this is Fox 40's palatial sports office that we
There
share
it
with
is.
like three other people. So that's the get up.
That's the get up. And, of course, Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
Doing all right. Haven't felt the most healthy recently, so I feel a little sluggish, I guess. But we're doing all right. Nothing
Can
too
we talk
crazy.
about that? Can we talk about that?
We can talk
Because
about that. Do we need to talk about
We're
that?
going to diagnose him or what?
no, I was none the wiser. We were at a game. I don't remember
I'm
what day
glad
it
'cause
was.
too many people were aware, which is
Really?
my
I
fault.
wasn't aware either while it was happening. Anyway.
Well, I didn't know, and then all of a sudden, I don't remember if we were in the media room or the press conference room, or we're in a room in the arena, and all of a sudden, in walks Brenden, and someone's asking him about like going to his car and couldn't breathe, and I'm like, what? Like you hear those? I mean, it's nothing to laugh about, but like then he showed back up. I'd be like, go home. Like if you're not feeling well, just go home. He's like, well, no, I got to hear what Mike Brown has to say about this game. Like, what happened with you?
Yeah,
Dedicated.
I mean,
Dedicated.
I just wasn't breathing great. I think it's probably allergy related. I do have asthma, obviously, if that wasn't obvious in this conversation.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, honestly.
Yeah. And over the last few years is when I really started to feel it more. And yeah, just a little mini asthma attack. And I may have started to panic and was trying my best to avoid it. So walking around a little, like ran out to my car to find my inhaler, could not find it. And then I found it in my car after I got home, of course, because I don't think I was looking amazingly, I guess, in a little bit of a frantic way. But I'm all right. I'm all right. Took some medication that helps. And so I just powered through for 45 minutes, sitting there breathing. And that's about it. Had to rewatch that Raptor game, I'll tell you that.
Oh, stop it. So you had to, you couldn't breathe, and you decided the best way was to run to your car,
I wouldn't say I
where
ran.
you didn't find your inhaler. At that moment, did you think you were going to pass away?
I did turn to Frankie at one point and was like, hey, my medication's supposed to help in like 20 minutes, but if it doesn't, I am leaving. And so,
I'm
we
glad
were
I'm
close,
glad you had a
but we
teammate
did.
or a buddy with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did have that
was all
situation.
right.
Like during the California Classic, like midway through the game, all of a sudden I could no longer swallow. Like I'm like, uh-oh. And I got sick. And you remember I was sitting next to Sean. I'm like, I don't feel very good. And then next thing you know, I had strep throat and I was out for like a week. Yeah. It happens. It
James,
happens.
you always get sick in like the summertime, like the weirdest odd times, I feel like.
Well, I did get the first time I got COVID is we showed up for the draft when Keegan Murray was drafted, and we were in the big gym, and someone there gave me COVID. So I came to the press conference 2 days later, not knowing I was sick, but then all of a sudden started feeling like a sniffle during the press conference. And sure enough, I had COVID and had to call you guys later that day. But outside of that, I don't typically, I mean, I'm at every game. I don't typically get sick
Yeah.
all that often. As I've gotten older, I get sick a little bit more than I used to. And I think all of us out there in the world, the pandemic, it like did a number on our like immune systems. Like I don't think I've been the same since the COVID time, just like hiding out inside for 2 years straight. So yeah. Welcome into the Kings Beat podcast. Sorry we have been detoured by
I'm not.
randomness. Sean's not sorry.
It's only 4 minutes. They'll be
He
fine.
he
Somebody in the
also
comments, 4:15 timestamp. We'll be fine.
if you're listening here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers this season. So that's a big push of ours. Also, if you're listening wherever, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, give us a rating and review. That would help us and sort of the algorithm of life. And go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat, get invited to all of the cool things that we do, and get everything sent directly to your inbox. Sacramento Kings are 5-4. on the season. They lost last night to the Los Angeles Clippers in an absolutely hideous, slow-moving, like mucked up game that didn't look good or feel good, or like it felt like it was never going to end.
Was that mucked up with an M?
Yeah, not with an F, Sean.
Okay.
I did not drop an F bomb in the first 5 minutes of the podcast.
We don't do that on this show.
What we do sometimes. Oh, well, Sean does.
We
And every once in a while, Brenden does, but I don't typically. Anyway, let's just start with this game because, I think a lot of Kings fans, number one, super, super emotional and like all over the board. Like we're 9 games into the season, people, and it just feels like the raw emotion is coming out, and I don't know if it's because of politics and like the week that's been the last couple of months it's been. I don't know what it is, but like everyone is so amped up. It's just a regular everyday loss to a team that, was the same exact record as the Sacramento Kings and who got some generous whistles early on. And but I just like, let's start with this game. Where are you guys at with the Clippers loss?
I mean, there's a big difference when you make threes versus when you don't. I do think it's simple, but we kind of have to start there. They made 3 threes. They haven't made less than, I believe it was 5 since Mike Brown has been head coach. I think this is the last time that they made this many threes or this few of their at least 25 attempts since the early 90s. Like it was borderline historically bad shooting from 3. And I thought that they were decent looks. Mike Brown even said after the game he thinks they should have shot 10 more. Today he said, he'd rather Kevin take 10 shots than what he ended up with 3 that he ended up with. And I think at some point Kevin's going to knock down some of those 10. So same with Keegan, like just being more confident and a quicker trigger there. And the Clippers switch everything, specifically that second unit when Batum comes in as the backup 5, and usually Domas is also resting in those minutes. I think their flow got a little bit messed up, but it feels like you kind of have to start with the 3-point shooting. And I don't know about you guys, but it's hard to give that aspect too much analysis outside of sometimes you miss shots.
Yeah. Sean?
Yeah, it was odd. And I asked the question after the game, even to a couple of people, even off camera, just to Mike Brown as well. Like, kind of felt like you had a piece like DeMar DeRozan. You already have a piece like De'Aaron Fox, who came into the league with a pretty solid mid-range game, that free throw extended jumper. That's just a patented move that is, kind of automatic for the most part throughout his career. And then you get somebody like DeMar DeRozan, who was a mid-range phenom. So you're already kind of playing in away from the perimeter as it is, and I think a lot of people are trying to they're trying to figure their way through it because obviously the start of the first 9 games hasn't been great from the perimeter and it's kind of been well documented, and then it kind of comes to a crescendo last night from the 3. And I understand what Mike Brown is saying. I actually don't disagree in terms of still looking to fire up more shots from the perimeter despite the lack of success in that game. Only 3 of them, but I feel like subconsciously their answer was abandon the 3. We've completely shot ourselves in both feet trying to find success from the perimeter, and let's just go to where our bread is buttered and get back into this. And especially when that in the fourth quarter when they ballooned that lead after that timeout, went from like 11 to 16 really quickly, and they just got back into it. Free throws, mid range, getting to the hoop, having a couple lay-ins, forcing some turnovers. I thought they showed some defense in that game, in the Toronto game, which might be honestly some of the best defense we've seen all year. I think they've actually been pretty solid defensively for the most part this year, but really impressed with their level of compete. And, you talk to some of these players that if you have a game where you're only hitting 3 threes, the fact that you had a chance to even make that a game, let alone cut it to 2 possessions, let alone compete to the end like that, kind of says a lot about where this team is at. So certainly we can get into, obviously the shooting woes and maybe how deep they go into the roster and Mike Brown's managing of minutes and little things that he's going to tinker with going forward, especially with the, really good Phoenix game on the horizon, although they won't have Kevin Durant. But I kind of like where the Kings are at right now, to be honest. It seems like they, for all the negatives and little tinkering and problems that have appeared over these first 9 games, for the most part, like they're still a very fun product and they're very competitive. And you can, I mean, if we fast forward to, January, February, and you've seen them keeping their head above water outside of the play-in tournament, maybe even as high as like fifth in the West with the way the West is going, I don't think that would shock any three of us at this point, based on the way this season has started. And we're going to hit the 10th game on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, the 3-point issue, I don't know what to make of it because, like, I know that Keegan Murray is going to be a 38+% 3-point shooter for his career. And to see him right now shooting 28% on 6.3 attempts per game isn't what you expect. To see Fox shooting 30% on 6.7, to see Malik Monk shooting 28.6% on 4.7 attempts per game. Kevin Huerter, 5.6 attempts per game. He's shooting 33.3%. And I think the biggest one for me is that Trey Lyles just is so in a funk. He's shooting 22.2% on 3 attempts per game. He's shooting 25% from the field overall. And so, look, I think that's going to be they need to figure this out. But it's also, when I look at people freaking out, and again, like 3 games into the season, we start seeing Mike Brown needs to be fired tweets. But to see it again last night, like last time I checked, Mike Brown didn't take a single freaking 3-point shot. And, like, you just have to be better. And, like, he can say, you want to see Kevin Huerter shoot more than 3. I don't remember Kevin Huerter passing on a 3 last night. I remember Keegan Murray passing on a couple of 3s, but I don't remember Kevin Huerter passing on any 3s. In fact, I thought he got a quick hook a bunch of times because of defensive matchup issues, but overall, I didn't see a lot of that. And this was the first time they faced a team that switches everything, and they didn't adapt well. And that's something that they're going to have to figure out, whether it's they didn't. People didn't read the scouting report, or whatever reason. There's no way they didn't know that team swishes the whole time, and they didn't have a game plan for it, especially when you're going to play the Clippers multiple times this season. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when it comes down to it, like I think I'm on the same page as both of you. Of like, I'm not really worried. This is still a team we're early, so take all these numbers for what you will. But 8th in offensive rating, and as you guys mentioned, you still, like, 98 points obviously isn't great. But when you made 3 threes, the fact you're still able to score 54 points in the paint on 27 of 38, when teams are obviously trying to take away the inside game when you're shooting a night like that. I think there's positives. DeMar DeRozan, it looked like he was sitting with 3 points, I want to say, at halftime, had a big stretch in that third quarter. That De'Aaron can have a big stretch at any moment. So it always feels like the Kings are going to be able to keep up in these games offensively. I think defensively is where my more large picture questions are, and obviously the depth. But I think highlighting the depth specifically from what I've seen, that fan perspective, makes you lose sight a little bit of how good the top end talent really is. And it's still the most important thing in this league.
Yeah.
It's funny too, because one of the things I've been hearing a lot of kind of critics and analysts and media folks, and even people who just watch the league for other teams scouting. Mike even mentioned it today. Among some of the problems that they're still trying to figure out is the ball movement, and certainly it's natural that when a team gets kind of tight down the stretch of games, that the ball movement and the ball kind of gets a little sticky, as Mike calls it. You don't see the ball movement as crisp or as kind of fluid as you'd see to start a game, and that's kind of natural. But the assist numbers, obviously, you see Fox, like, no assists, 7 turnovers, I think it was. They've got the hockey assist, which I think is important to point out. And right now, like, through 9 games, if you compare it to the last year, they're exactly 20 assists shy of where they were to start the season. So they had 20 more assists to start the season. I think what really just jumps out at you is, the Clippers defend really well. I mean, they do a nice job of taking away what the Kings want to do. And I think they ran into some things, and Mike Brown detailed at practice today. Brenden could probably talk a little bit more about that, because I had to run off to another assignment. But he really kind of talked about how the Clippers and the switching of 1 through 5 and how that kind of caused a little bit of problems. They had only 19 assists in that game, and they relied a lot on ISO ball, and that's also, ironically enough, with De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan, got them back into the game. So a little bit of a blessing and a curse, but only 20 assists shy from where they were a year ago. So I don't know that it's that much of a cause for concern. I think certainly the shooting woes are gonna leap off the page more than anything.
Yeah, and I would like Sean to your point. I mean, they're averaging 24.6 assists per game. They're 21st in the NBA right now in assists, and I think that number has come down over the last few games. Where again, their assist numbers have taken a hit, but last season they were at 28.3 per game, and they were seventh in the league. And like certainly the ball has gotten sticky. Part of that is the DeMar DeRozan effect. But even DeMar DeRozan had 6 assists last night. It feels like most nights it's only Domas. There was a couple of games ago. What's the game where he had 6 shot attempts? He was 2 of 2 in the first half, and
That
he had
was the Toronto game.
yeah, he had 11 assists like in the first 2 minutes of the third quarter, and no one else had more than one assist on the rest of the team. And there's just not a lot of good ball movement. If we go back to like the first week of the season, like there was like I think it was the second game of the season they lost, but there was moments where the ball movement was elite. We were watching the ball fly all over the place. I think it was third game of the season because I remember Keon Ellis was part of it, and the ball just hopped from one player to the next to the next. They've kind of lost that, and when they lose that, the people who really lose out in the anti-ball movement sort of action is Domantas Sabonis, Keegan Murray, and Kevin Herter. Because if you're not hitting them off of all the ball move, all off of all the non-ball movement, off-ball movement, then you kind of eliminate what they're doing. And so there is too much ISO ball right now, and they need to figure that out, and they need to get on the same page with what their offense really is, because right now it does feel like it does. They're number 8 in the league in offensive rating. If they were hitting, let's say, 35% from three, they're probably number 2 or 3 in the league. Like it's that big of a difference. They're just, but they're also, I don't feel like they're getting enough open looks, and I feel like they're missing a lot of the open looks they are getting. And so I think it's kind of an interesting, like it's just, it's not real aesthetically pleasing right now. If that makes sense.
Well, it
You
does
know?
make sense because you said you don't like watching James Harden play basketball. So
Oh, I
being
don't.
right off of the end of off of the just off of seeing James Harden do what he did, which I thought he was pretty awesome. It was one of the better games I'd seen him play against the Kings in recent memory,
Mhm.
uh, and it was. But I get it. I know people hate watching him play basketball.
Yeah.
Think back to like the 2 or 4 point game he had that I want to say might have been his last game as a Brooklyn Net or second to last, something like that. And everybody was
Boy,
talking up Davion's defense when James Harden clearly just didn't want to be there anymore. But anyways, I think the Domas thing specifically has stood out to me, and the minutes without Sabonis have been something I've been starting to track even more so as these games go on. And, on court, when he's on the court, they have 120.1 offensive rating. When he's off the floor, lowest number on the team, 95.7 it goes down to. And DeMar actually has somewhat similar numbers. And I think that does sort of go in line with what you're saying, James, of like the ball movement and Domas really being the one where that is the case. And I think when Domas is off the floor, you're seeing a lot of ISO ball, obviously, and DeMar is elite in that aspect. So he's able to get it done. And I think De'Aaron has had his moments. There's spurts and maybe like a stretch that he'll play for where you do kind of feel him have those takeover moments, but it kind of feels like just a lot of reliance on Domas and DeMar right now. But I somewhat think that this is just a stylistic change to a degree. They still need to get back to these knocking down threes and more ball movement than what we're seeing right now, but it's not going to be the same level as last year. And I think that's just the nature of, you added the guy that's 29th all time in scoring, and he likes to take his mid-range shots, and he's pretty good at them.
Yeah, no, he's been really impressive. Let's get to the other big issues Sacramento Kings are having right now, and that is that De'Aaron Fox has got some sort of finger issue. I don't really. I mean, like I've heard that it's a ligament issue, and like he's made reference a couple of times that, well, there's not going to be a month where he can just take off, and so he's just going to have to deal with it the rest of the season. And I think that what we're learning is that a month off doesn't mean like, a month to rest his finger. He needs surgery to repair something in his pinky on his shooting hand. And what it's basically doing is, number one, it's clearly impacting his 3-point shot. It's also last season he averaged 2.6 turnovers per game. Right now he's at 4.1 after he turned the ball over 7 times last night. And they aren't even like really they're just bad turnovers. They're turnovers where like you can just see that his hand is limited, and sometimes they're just mistakes where he's running into too much traffic and he's trying too hard. But other times that we saw it in the first 3 minutes of the game last night. I think he had 3 turnovers. One of them he just threw right out of bounds, where it looked like his hand is just not working the way it should. How concerned are you guys with this? And then I think the other problem that we have is that I can't really bring up this injury without pointing out that one of the reasons why De'Aaron Fox isn't just shutting it down is because De'Aaron Fox is playing for max money. And he's playing for, if he makes All NBA, he gets up to 35% of the salary cap. And it's one of the reasons why he didn't sign an extension this summer, because there you get an extra year and an extra 5 to 10% of the NBA salary cap if you are an All NBA player. And I don't think he's going to shut it down, because he can only miss 17 games. And if he misses 17 games, he's not eligible for All NBA. And even if he is eligible for All NBA, it's really tough if you miss, 15, 16 games to go heal up from a finger, some sort of surgery or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you're not in the running, even if you maybe haven't missed 65 games. I mean, if you haven't gone below that 65 game plateau. Where are you guys at sort of with this injury?
For me, I think I'll take him at his word. If he can play, if he can be effective, clearly you can see what he's still able to put up some numbers. I think his defense is still looking really solid. I think he's still trying to figure it out. And I think one of the problems in playing through something like this is that tape draws attention. People around the league know about it, and it becomes an instant target. And that's tough. So I think it's a little bit of yeah, I think I'm fine. I can play through it. But I think each game is a learning experience for him in how to play through it, how to react to the way he's being defended, how to react to contact, how to react when even pushing the ball. And one of the concerns I had was when you have the ball in your hands and your ball's out 10 out of 10 speed going up the floor, is it going to make things a little bit wonky for you? Because that's where he excels and is clearly when he's most at his most lethal. So that hasn't really been a problem yet. Certainly turnovers are there. I think it's a little bit of a learning to play with this abnormality in a way, because again, he's healthy enough to play in his mind. He's having to shoot different. He's having to handle different. It's a little bit of an evolution. And one of the things I don't like, and you'll see this, and it's, if a guy has a hamstring injury, you overcompensate, then it becomes something else. I don't know that that'll happen with the finger, other than just drawing attention to it to where it can be a target for a lot of people. So I think you take him at his word, you give him a few games, you see how it is. He's been playing with it really in these first 10 games. I don't know that outside of just pain tolerance that it's going to become any more of an issue than it already is.
Yeah, I wonder how much the Supermax plays in. I'm sure that he wants that money. I mean, I think anybody in his shoes would, but I feel like this is something that we've seen a couple times from Fox, not specifically a finger necessarily, but I feel like we see him play through injuries throughout the last couple seasons, and there's been a month or so where it probably has hindered his play. And I feel like that's been kind of a theme throughout the years here. And I think it's a credit to him that he wants to play through it. I think the debate of, when he should be resting versus playing through it is its own thing. And I honestly don't feel qualified enough to be speaking on that, but I appreciate that he is playing through it. And ironically enough, a night they only make 3 threes, he's the one that makes 2 of them. But then there's the 0 of 11 game. And I think shot selection is really the conversation that I've been curious about with Fox this year. But when it comes to the injury, I think that for sure you're seeing it in the turnovers. You're seeing it in some of the shooting stuff. But this kind of feels like this happens a little bit with De'Aaron sometimes, that there's going to be some little lingering thing that's affecting him. Or honestly, also, he does get off to slow starts to most seasons.
Yeah, I think that all of that's true. And again, like I believe that we're talking about like he doesn't just need to sit and rest his finger. That's not what we're talking about. That's when he's saying he'd need a month. That's not what we're not just saying he's going to go hang out for a month and then the finger's magically going to get better. This thing is going to bug him all season long. He did something to it, and you know, strangely enough, he's never shown up on a single injury report. Uh, so we have no idea what technically it is. And like, look, I believe firmly, like Fox keeps saying, hey, look, I can play. If I can play, if I'm healthy enough to play, I'm going to play. And I respect that. I do. And I don't think he's doing anything. James Harden came into last night averaging 5.1 turnovers per game, and he doesn't have a pinky issue. So, there are guys that in the league that are heavy usage players that turn the ball over, and Fox has just never been like a huge turnover guy. 2.6 turnovers per game isn't ridiculous for a guy who has a 30 usage percentage. And then the other thing, that Sean, you brought up, um, like defensively, he's been excellent. Like he's been really good. And that's kind of the funny thing, because you would think that the injury would cause problems on the defensive end, especially with him getting all the deflections. He's like third in the league in deflections. He's in the top 5 in steals. And I think he's been really aggressive, but also his opponent is shooting well below. I think his opponent coming into last night's game, according to Will Z stats, his opponents were shooting like 36% on the season and like 28% from three, something like that. So he's doing a really good job defensively, and it's just he's having to figure out how to play with the injury. He's still shooting 48% from the field. He's just not hitting his 3-point shot. So again, I'm kind of with you guys. Like if he wants to play through it, the Kings are going to have to adapt a little bit. I think they adapted well. Last night he had 7 turnovers and they had 13 as a team. Like nobody else is making a bunch of mistakes. You're muted, Sean.
Different setup here in this office. I apologize for that.
Yeah.
What's funny too is like I commend him in a way too, because he's asked about it especially after a game where no assists, 7 turnovers, and the 3-point shooting for the team is bad. His shooting's whatever. It's like he's like, yeah, that could happen to me with a healthy finger. It's not like he's wanting to blame everything on the finger injury. But you can see it. I mean, there was a moment last night where he really took a slap to the hand, or somebody poked and prodded at it, and it drew discomfort, and he's looking at it. But yeah, I commend him for not looking at the finger and ultimately blaming the poor performance or some of the turnovers and some of the mistakes on that finger, which is funny because so much of the team, you look at last night in particular with the loss of the Clippers, where you're talking to, I think we talked to Malik, Domas after the game, Fox. Everybody's blaming that loss on the on the poor shooting from the perimeter, still being at the level of competing, but it's like that's something that they can blame. Whereas what's happening to his finger and some of the poor mistakes or whatever that happened in that game, he won't blame the finger for. So just kind of a little interesting little scenario there, but I like the fact that he's not going to blame that on his injury at the moment.
Yeah, and like, look, I asked him the question to open the press conference with him last night, specifically so we had it on the record. Like whatever it is that he's saying that he has to do, like we need to hear it from him. And it's not something that I feel like we've heard. Like we heard rumor that he had a finger issue, and then he told Gary Gerald he had a finger issue, but I still haven't heard that. Like sort of what he was saying about that. So this is one of those moments where it's like, hey, you got a player up there. He just turned the ball over 7 times, and I wasn't looking to like specifically blame all 7 turnovers on the finger issue, because a couple of them just were him running into traffic and getting the ball stripped. But at the same time, we do need it like on the record, like what's going on here.
Yeah.
Like tell us, because we're not getting anything like in print from the team.
Yeah, and well, he did. I mean, he talked about it that he dislocated the pinky in training camp, and he talked about that it was probably a ligament. I mean, he's talked about it, but the fact that saying probably it's a ligament leads me to believe that maybe there's no MRI. There were X-rays, and the X-rays were negative, but it's just it's a pain in his hand. I think he has when he says I think it's a ligament. I think they do know that it is a ligament. Um, I think at this point they have that, but I don't know if they've had an MRI because there hasn't been a press release on results of said imaging if there was one. But knowing that he has dislocated that finger and feels that it hasn't healed properly since then, and would probably, when he is talking about a month off, as you mentioned, James, that's not for healing, that's for rehabilitation from surgery to correct the problem, leads one to believe that yes, it's likely a ligament.
Yeah. Brenden, you're good on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that it's he's got to get right for this team to still be the best version of themselves. I think the best version of this team is when De'Aaron Fox is the best player. But that doesn't mean that these other guys can't be on other nights and still power through. But they definitely need him because he's one of 3 guys on the team playing at least 37 minutes, and there's a fourth in Domas playing 36.6. So clearly need him out there.
Yeah, I guess we can go there too. The minutes. Mike has tried to explain why the minutes have got out of control. He's tried to, again, he's brought up the fact that Jordy's not there, and Jordy was who was subbing guys in and out, and I think Doug has taken over that role, but maybe he hasn't been as aggressive at switching guys in and out. Just as they're kind of like feeling out the situation and learning each other as like a coach assistant type deal in that specific role. Um, but I also look at the Kings roster and I'm watching how some of the guys are playing, and I don't know that you have a lot of options outside of playing most of these guys 37 minutes a night. Like, I would like to tell you that's not the case, but I mean, you talked about like on court, off court splits. I looked it up just a minute ago, and when Keegan Murray's on the court, the Kings are plus like 9.8, and when he's off the court, they're like minus 12.8. They're like that's a plus 21 point something difference when he's on the court versus off, and that's come down over the last 2 games because that was at 39 like a
Well,
couple of days ago.
yeah, and I'm usually the guy that would say pump the brakes, 6 games, 8 games,
Small
whatever,
sample
nine,
size.
for
Yeah.
sure. But no, but that is impressive because you can see it in the games how much of an impact he's having. He's rebounding well. It's a superb start to the season for him. If only he'd get some threes to fall. Everything he's doing, especially off dribble drives, I've been impressed with what Keegan Murray is doing.
Yeah.
Rebounding the ball well. Like
Yeah. Go ahead,
he's
Brandon.
doing everything, and they don't have. That's where the positional logjam, I guess, or lack thereof, when it comes to the wings forwards, really stands out. They do not have another guy anywhere close to Keegan Murray, which does come back a little to Trey Lyles not being very good to start the season, but he's not Keegan Murray even when he is the best version of himself. Like they just don't have another guy anything like that. Like if Kevin Durant was playing tomorrow, it's like your defensive options. I don't know what they were supposed to do because every night it's like, all right, Keegan, take the best guy. After that, kind of figure it out.
Well, yeah. I mean, now you have Keegan Murray can go defend Devin Booker. And that's just the way this team is built right now. And I'll bring up the Clippers very specifically. Like going into that game, I knew the Kings were going to have some trouble because they have 2 excellent wing defenders, and teams like just look around the league. They're like Minnesota. They always take Jaden McDaniels and put him on De'Aaron Fox. And Jaden McDaniels is 6'9", but he moves really well and he's super long. Well, the Clippers run Derrick Jones Jr. out there and Terrence Mann out there. Both of those guys are excellent defenders, and they don't have to decide which faucet they're going to turn off between De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan. They've got 2 dudes that can turn both the faucets off. And for that matter, Domantas Sabonis has never played all that well against Zubats. So if you're looking at the matchups there, their top 3 guys, the Kings' top 3 guys, had very difficult defensive matchups in that game. And I don't think that we can say that all that much about James Harden. like James Harden and Norman Powell, if you're going to go back and forth, they weren't going to face the best the Kings have to offer, because you're going to get lost in switches and stuff. So I thought that there would be a little bit of an issue. I didn't think the Kings would lose that game, but that's neither here nor there.
Norman Powell, by the way, has been brilliant.
He has been absolutely
Brilliant.
incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, but my point is that, like, it just points to the same exact issue that we've brought up for, like, it feels like 3 years. Like, you need a Derrick Jones Jr., you need a Terrence Mann, you need somebody like that, an additional one, because Keegan Murray is, again, if it's not Kevin Durant, he's going to be defending, Bradley Beal, he's going to be defending Devin Booker, like whoever the most difficult cover is on the team that you're playing, that's where he slides onto as far as a cover. And you just need more, because when he goes off the court, you don't really have someone that can step into that role that's anywhere near his size or strength or, sort of defensive acumen.
There are moments where I wonder, you look around the league of guys that could play that role, and then you see the start to the season, and I can't help but wonder that even if they had someone like that, maybe not an elite person like that, but I think even like a Derrick Jones Jr., for example, who I wouldn't necessarily consider elite, but certainly solid at what he does. How many minutes would he get off the bench, do you think?
I don't know. That's a good question. Well, if you don't go to hell in a handbasket, he'd probably get 20.
I don't know.
The problem is
20,
yeah, I don't know what we're seeing with Trey Lyles right now, which is sort of like where we have to transition and pivot to here. I don't know what they have to do here with Trey Lyles, because Mike is clearly like, I don't think Trey is like, first of all, he's not played well. He struggled in every single time he stepped on the floor. But on top of that, he's struggling to find his rhythm, but he's also, I don't feel like he's dealing with it very well. Does that make sense? Like, we saw him like rip his jersey the one day, and he had a funny response to why he ripped his jersey off. But at the same time, I'm kind of watching him, and he's frustrated. He's angry. He's not happy at all that he's coming off the court. And it's really difficult to get him into a rhythm when the Kings are playing every other day. And even like right now, I mean, they got 3 games in 4 nights. They had a little practice today, but they don't have time to kind of figure it out, for someone to figure it out. And Trey isn't figuring it out in what limited time he has to kind of get it going. And I think it really does hurt this team that they don't have that extra piece here. They're really running with like a 7-man rotation. And a lot of it's because, I don't think Alex Len was great early in the season. And at this point, I don't think, Trey Lyles is playable in many situations. Where are we at with Trey, and how do we think he gets through this thing?
Defensively, I think it's been really bad. I think it's been sort of reminiscent to Kevin Huerter like last season. It seems like that they're just going at him in isolations, doing their best to get him involved in pick and rolls. I would be curious from Trey's perspective, and I might try to ask him about this at some point, like his level of enjoyment, like playing the 5. That's what he's doing a lot out there. He does still get minutes next to Domas. And obviously I think he's more of a traditional 4 in the NBA, but is there any aspect of like not enjoying playing the 5? We saw him do it last year, and I think he was fairly successful, but that was more so for stints. It seems to be a larger majority of his minutes throughout the course of this season. When it comes down to it, I just think he needs to be moving a little bit better. Like he came into last year and had lost some weight and was moving very well. The weight doesn't look any different to me at all. I can't help but keep going back to the groin issue. He missed all of preseason. He missed training camp. But I honestly don't know how long that is a reasonable thing to say, well, he's still dealing with that, or is he still trying to get back to his peak movement? Because I think the shot's going to fall eventually, even if there's some sort of mental aspect that anybody could go through there. I think it's going to fall eventually. He's been a decent 3-point shooter for a decent amount of his career. I just think he's got to get his lateral movement back on the defensive end in my mind.
Sean?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have a training camp. I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but they are, Domas makes a good point of talking about how they are playing differently offensively. I think defensively, as Brenden pointed out, he's still trying to find his way. But I think it's really difficult to do in the small amount of minutes that he's having to do it because it feels like there's a lot of a wind up to what he's doing. I don't give a damn what he does offensively most of the time because his team is so offensively talented that it does for me really come down to physicality and defense for what he provides. And I'm just not there yet with him in terms of looking at him and saying, throw my hands up and say he's unplayable with respect to what you said, James. Like I get it for sure. But I also I think have a little bit more of a longer rope with him to the extent because there's really nobody that they could go to. Um, Certainly, there's nobody else that they could go to that Mike Brown will trust. And I think, yes, you had some moments from Isaac Jones in the preseason, and he was a maybe in Mike Brown's head. Um, Outside of that, Orlando Robinson is still out with his MCL sprain. I mean, he should be soon to be reevaluated and maybe an update on where he's at. But um, they just don't really have anyone to fill the void. And because that Trey has that experience and has typically played well with some of those rotations, I think it's just they're waiting on him to figure it out. You can certainly see his frustration. You mentioned the tearing of the jersey. He did not want to speak to the media for the umpteenth time again today when he's been requested. He's in his head a little bit and certainly wearing the frustration. So, but it's I hate saying this. It's every time we talk about the start of any NBA season, it's early. I mean, at what point do you say it's not early for him? I think you give him like honestly a month before you can totally evaluate where he's at.
No, I'm with you. And, in all fairness, because if we're going to point out how good the on court, off court stuff is for Sabonis or for Keegan Murray, like, look, he's a 116 offensive rating when he's on the court, and the Kings are 117.2 when he's off, which isn't that big of a difference. He's a 112 defensive rating when he's on the court and a 111.7 when he's off. So he's only a negative 1.6 right now. And this is the worst version we've ever seen of Trey in his time in Sacramento. And so my point is that, like, while we would like to, like, shine a light on how Trey is struggling, it really has had very little impact. I mean, if you have a bench player who's a negative 1.6, like, net rating when he's on the court versus off the court, that's not a big enough, like, needle mover, especially when you have guys that are plus 21s to change the outcome of a game. And so, again, I think that they do have time here for Trey to figure it out. The unfortunate thing is, again, there's no time to practice and there's no time to really get it right. Trey's got to find himself in the gym shooting and trying to get through whatever it is that's happening there. He's got to be with the training staff at all times, trying to, what Brenden said, work on his lateral quickness and sort of get back in full-fledged NBA shape. But I also understand in certain games where it just stands out, where you can't keep leaving him out there and hoping for something different. And to Brendan's point, I don't think Trey has any problems playing the center, playing the five. He's played the five like on and off throughout most of his career, and he's talked about it like multiple times. I do think it's probably the best position for him, and his ability to pull 6'10", 6'11" guys out on the perimeter and shoot over them. He's still got that in his bag. And is he a good matchup against a Naz Reid? Probably not. But especially in game one where he hasn't played in 6 weeks. But overall, I kind of want to see where he progresses. And maybe that's what we see. We'll see him against Naz Reid again on Friday, most likely. And we'll see if he looks like the same player or if it's, if he's better or worse, or if he handles the situation better, because we're going to start seeing teams for a second time and sort of get to like have sort of benchmarks for him.
That's
Yes.
the first game of the Emirates Cup, yeah? On
The
Friday?
Emirates Cup. Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Actually, I called Emirates Cup. It's really the NBA Cup. Emirates is just the sponsor, but it's really the NBA Cup.
It's really the end season tournament.
Yeah.
Sean. True. It's really the end season tournament. So, yeah, that's coming up on Friday. That's game one of the Cup. Brenden, you mentioned it earlier, I believe. There's news today that Kevin Durant has a calf strain, which is never a good thing for Kevin Durant because Kevin Durant had a calf strain a few years ago, and then rushed back to play in the finals and popped his Achilles. He's also 36 years old, something like that. So Kevin Durant will miss Sunday's game against the Sacramento Kings. He'll also miss Wednesday's game. He'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks, according to Shams Charania from ESPN. But like this team it never seems to matter. I don't care what version of this team, like for the last 40 years in Sacramento, it doesn't really matter who's playing and who's not. It feels like the Kings will either struggle or they won't. And whether Kevin Durant's there or not doesn't seem to matter. Do you guys feel that way, or am I just like crazy?
They've started out like a house on fire. I mean, they've
Yeah.
been tremendous. He's been a big part of that success. I should also mention that I saw Yusuf Nurkic is also questionable for that game with an ankle. Um, so yeah, to me, it's just this could be an opportunity for Sacramento to go in there. Them having to try to figure out to play without KD. It's different because they haven't had to do that really with the addition of Tyus Jones and all that. So um, yeah, opportunity plenty to go in there and give them. They've only lost once, right? I think they're
Yeah,
eight
they're
and
8 and
one.
1. Yeah,
Yeah.
8 and 1. Yeah, Brendan, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've looked really good. I think that Budenholzer is a good coach, and the questions that have surrounded him, like this is a guy that won 60 games with Atlanta. They ended up winning a championship in Milwaukee, and when they eventually moved on from him in Milwaukee, it was for postseason questions. Like they were still doing great in the regular season, and so it's not the most surprising thing to me. I thought Phoenix was going to be pretty good this year. Obviously, a lot of talent. They shoot the three really well and then defend the paint on the other end. Bradley Beal seems to sort of have figured out that the ideal way for him to still be a star on this team like nightly basis is they need a defender, and so can you go do that? And I think that he's embraced that more so. I'm not saying he's locked down or anything, but definitely levels better and getting true playmakers, getting Tyus Jones in there, Monte Morris in there as well. I really like their role players and Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, Nurkic. Plumlee's there, a guy that we've talked about who knows how many times on this podcast throughout the last couple of years. But I think the difference in just having that big three together the first season and now going into year two, where you've seen, all right, what are the ideal complementary pieces that we need around these guys, and making those minor adjustments are definitely paying off early. It's going to be a tough one for the Kings defense. I think they can keep up offensively, but you got to be able to get some stops and defend the three.
Yeah, defending the three is going to be the big thing. I mean, losing Kevin Durant and his 42 point whatever percent from three is pretty substantial for them. And he's just unguardable. And you have to stick Keegan Murray on him, So without him there, it does change things. Devin Booker has not shot the ball particularly well from three. He's at like 32.4% on almost 9 attempts per game. But it's a much deeper team than it was last year. But I don't think they'll miss that much of a beat because they're just going to slide most likely Grayson Allen into the starting lineup. And like, there's a huge difference between Grayson Allen and Kevin Durant. Don't get me wrong, but Grayson Allen is a great 3-point shooter, and he is going to, basically he was a starter all of last season and fit in, perfectly well there. And I would see them like still having a ton of success. It's just whether Devin Booker can kind of ramp up his game to take on some of that scoring that you're going to miss from Durant not being there. I
They
did.
also
Go ahead.
their games go down to the wire. I mean, they've been in so many. I mean, I think every one of their games, if I'm not mistaken, have been kind of single possession down to the wire type atmosphere. So that's nothing new to Sacramento, because plays in those types of games a lot. So two of the, I think, better closing teams in the league, or at least in the West, will be fun to watch.
Yeah, interesting, Sean. You mentioned that they're 8-1 on the season, which is first in the West. Their expected win total so far this season is 5-4. So, like, of the games that they have won, like it's very surprising. Like they've had one overtime game. They lost to the Lakers by 7 They beat the Mavericks by 12, but then it's been like a 4-point game, a 6-point game, a 6-point game, a 2-point game, a 3-point game, and a 1-point game over the last 3. And I watched a bunch of their game against Philadelphia. First of all, what is his name? Gabaselli? Why am I saying his name wrong? The Frenchman that has come over.
Yeah, Yabusele.
Oh, Yabusele. There we go. Garuba. There we go. Brain not working. He's been fun to watch. And
I'm laughing because it sounds like you're making shit up.
no, you know who I'm talking about.
No, I know you're talking about it, but
yeah.
He was drafted by the Celtics while I was still very much paying attention. They called him the French Draymond.
Yeah, that's right, French Draymond.
And then he was spectacular in the Olympics, absolutely spectacular. So he's a guy that I think the Kings should have looked at in when he decided to come over to the U.S. But there was a play where he got the ball in the post and pump faked, and Grayson Allen leaped and he ducked, and Grayson Allen was going to fly over the top of him. And then Grayson Allen just decided to swing his knee in and kneed him in the back of the head.
Didn't swing his knee.
I just like Grayson Allen to me.
Stop. The guy looks like Ted Cruz. I get it. He's had some moments. But the guy, I watched that play.
You're a dookie, man. Come on.
I am. But look, I will call a spade. Like, he's got some tripping issues that have happened throughout the league. Yes. He went up the dude's
tripping
back.
issues.
Yeah. He got caught, went up, jumped over his head. He didn't swing his knee. His knee literally just collides with the back. It's a tough play, and he was assessed a flagrant. I think rightfully so. But I didn't look at that play and think anything intentional about it. But he's got a track record. So any little thing that happens gets blown out of proportion. And by the way, he's also a hell of a player. I mean, he is. I think he's a guy that almost any team could use. And he's not quite a hockey goon, because that's kind of a little disrespectful to his talent ability. But yeah, I didn't see him swing the knee, James.
He brought the knee in. He could have just kept going over the top, and it's like he panicked at the last second and brought the knee in. Either way, I agree with you. Grayson Allen is a very talented player, and Grayson Allen has bulked up a ton this year because they told him he was going to play more like 3-4, which is crazy. But the other thing I'll point out is we'll see him tomorrow. He is graying so bad. Like, very rarely do you see like a 29-year-old NBA player who is all of a sudden like salt and pepper. You'll be like, oh wow, he's looking a little. He's got to wash that gray out of his hair. Just saying.
I'm gonna have to pay attention to that one. Yeah.
You'll see it. You're like, boy, he looks old. He's still a hell of a player. I agree with you, Sean. He is a heck of a 3-point shooter and like a really, really solid NBA player. I did not think he was
crazy athlete too. I mean, that guy is jump out of the gym, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's
sneaky athlete.
Yeah.
His career path has kind of been this very similar to JJ Redick, where it was like early on, you're like, I don't know.
No,
you don't think so?
Oh, JJ Redick was a college player of the year and fucking shoots the hell out of the ball. Like, this is no, Grayson Allen got by on athleticism, and nice player. I think JJ, certainly had him beat in terms of type of player he was coming into the league, but both end up with nice careers.
Yeah, but coming into the league, JJ Redick was horrible the first 4 years of his career.
Well,
he averaged 6 points, 4.1, 6, and then 9.6. He didn't hit 10 points a game until his 5th season in Orlando, and then he went on to find better roles for himself at different points.
Situational. He was a journeyman. A lot of teams.
Yeah. So I don't think his career is that much different than Grayson Allen's. They're both great shooters. They're both a 4th, 5th guy in your offense. Rotational pieces. I don't know. Okay, so let's get to the business of basketball. Nothing, Brenden. Oh,
I think
saving my breath.
I think he's not alone. He's not alone in the room. He doesn't want a dog to bark at him.
Yeah,
I get it.
Well, I could, yeah. No, we'll save it for next time. I could have taken it like a puff of my inhaler at this timing, to
Oh, your
really,
inhaler. I think your inhaler.
we need some. Okay, relax, Sean.
Gotta-
Relax, Sean.
He should have gone full. He should have gone full Goonies there, Sean Austin and Goonies, and taken a hit off his inhaler before he.
Take a hit
Yeah,
off something.
yeah. There we go. There we go. The Kings are 5-4. Coming into this, like I had conversations with people around the team, and they thought, like, well, not everyone there thinks this, because some people think they should be 9-0 or 10-0, even though they haven't played 10 games. That's always one problem. But the fact that they're 5-4, that they might go, 5-5 or 6-4, this kind of feels like where they should be after 10 games, because of the injury issues in camp and sort of the slow start that they got. Are you guys seeing that, or do you feel like they aren't, like, sort of growing in the right way that you would like to see? I know there are some clear hiccups that we're seeing with the shooting woes and stuff, but are you seeing progression? And is this kind of where you thought they would be after 10 games, or did you think they would be way better?
I wouldn't say way better. I think that the shooting, I think, will come around, and there's just going to be some lulls and ups and downs throughout the course of the season that goes on with that. They had a solid run after those first two games. I thought of stringing some games together, and still, if you win a couple more on this trip, which isn't the easiest thing, then we're feeling good again. We're still at a very early point where one win or loss changes a lot when it comes to these records, and it's just the reality of you're facing a really competitive Western Conference. I think too. That's 5-4. They're sitting in the 11th seed. You're 5-4 in the Eastern Conference. You're the 3 seed, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I think that this has been about as expected to me. I'm somebody who thought that they were going to maybe flirt with 50 wins and 6 seed or so. So this seems about par for the course to me. Some adjustments to DeMar, but for the most part, he's fit in fairly well.
Yeah, I'm inclined to believe to agree with that. I think I didn't expect a 3-1 road trip. I think that was very impressive, especially with the overtime game that was up in Toronto. Had a chance to win that one. All these games have been close, and I like the way they compete. Sitting at 5-4, I don't know that I'm surprised. I don't know that I was even expecting this, but I kind of thought through the first 5 games, if you could go, excuse me, through the first 10 games, if they went 5-5, I thought that would be pretty successful. But clearly, we know what the value is of getting out to a hot start. You kind of look around the West too. We talked about the KD injury already. Obviously, John Morant is got something going on. Zion Williamson with the Pelicans has something going on now with his hamstring. There's little nicks and injuries that are plaguing these teams. Like the Warriors were without Steph Curry for a little while, and
Aaron Gordon.
Aaron Gordon has the thing with Denver. It hasn't hurt Golden State. They're 7-2. So the early start is going to be imperative, especially with a healthy team. And that said, I think I thought that if they went 5-5 through their first 10, we'll see what happens tomorrow. That'll be the 10th game tomorrow night in Phoenix. But yeah, I think that's about what I expected. But I feel like the path is just weird. Like I don't know that I had necessarily the Clipper game as a mark-in, kind of a win there necessarily. But I kind of thought they'd beat Minnesota with that season opener. Didn't happen. You had a shot to win the game, so there's certainly things that have kind of blossomed along the way. But the way they got there might be a little bit different. But I expected maybe 5-5 is what I kind of thought would be successful for them, and if they could do that, then all good things.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to put this in perspective. Brenden said the Kings are 11th in the West. They're actually tied for 7th in the West, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that had 5-4.
Right.
Right. That's coming into today.
And there was more, by the way, when they were 4-3. It was like the whole West, outside of 2 or 3 teams, were 4-3 at one
Yeah,
point.
yeah. It's crazy. There are 11 teams that are 500 or better in the West. In the East, 500 or better, there's one team that's 500. The Knicks are 4-4. And then Boston and Cleveland are above 500. Everyone else in the Eastern Conference is below 500. Like Charlotte is right at the top of that group. They're 4-5, but So is Brooklyn. Brooklyn and Detroit, 4-6. All of these teams, the bottom of the Eastern Conference is crazy. It's Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Toronto. I don't think Toronto I would put as a team I would expect to be a playoff team, but certainly a contender for a play-in spot. Miami is 3-5. Man, the East is just absolutely trash right
Brooklyn
now.
is also currently beating the 10-0 Cavs by 10 with 8 minutes left.
Look at that. Shout out Jordy Fernandez, because that team does not have great talent. It's got like Cam Thomas, who's a mad chucker, and then not a whole lot else. Like, that's a bunch of smoke and mirrors, but good for him having a team that's playing hard. So you build your identity that way and then go get talent down the road.
I had a
Definitely.
notification that went off in my ear. Brenden, did you mention the game right now with Brooklyn and
I
Cleveland?
did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Looking
pretty
crazy.
impressive.
Dennis Schroeder's been playing great for them too. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like Germany, Dennis Schroeder, and Australia, Patty Mills. If you're off a year of international basketball with either one of those guys, they're gonna ball out.
Okay. All right. I did not expect Dennis Schroeder to walk into this season and average. Right now he's at 28 a game. He's at 19.9. Cam Thomas, on the other hand, I could understand Cam Thomas averaging 25 a game, just because that dude has like no conscience. Like, he doesn't care. He's gonna hoist every single time he touches the ball. He's growing into a really nice player. So I don't want to disrespect Cam Thomas. He's done a good job as like either late first or early second round pick of growing into a really, really nice scorer in the league. What was he? A 27th pick. Yeah, in the 2021 draft. Yeah, interesting.
Anything surprise you guys in the West so far? I mean, like I said, I think I like 10-game sample sizes to look at evaluations. I even kind of mentioned that to Mike Brown a little bit today. I like looking at strings of 10 games and kind of seeing where a team is at. Is there anything that surprises you guys in the West yet?
Outside of Golden State, not really. I thought OKC would be great. I thought Phoenix would be really good. I didn't think they'd be 8-1, but that's again a couple of really good finishes to get to that point. I don't know, Brendan. I thought Houston would be solid. I don't think there's any big surprise.
What's wild
Yeah.
about the Warriors, by the way, they're 7-2. 5 of those are on the road. 5 of those wins came on the road.
Okay,
And
but
2 of them
I'm gonna pull
without.
this record because isn't it against a lot of really bad teams?
It is.
Yeah,
Although they
Portland,
did beat Boston.
Utah, New Orleans twice, Houston, Washington. They beat
Boston.
the Celtics. They beat the Celtics and then just got smacked around by the Cavs. But
Yeah, I don't know that
Yeah.
they can sustain that, but I will say for a team that's like primed, I look at them. I look at Clippers a little bit, the Lakers a little bit too, but I look at the Warriors as like a team that's just primed to make a move, and for them to have that type of start with a lot of different things going on. The Kuminga thing is odd. Steph obviously was hurt. It's interesting right now.
they are a weird one for sure. I did not expect them to be the second best defense in the league. And on the other side, I mean, the first seed is OKC, 97.3 defensive rating, and that clearly leading the league. Second place is, like I said, Golden State, but 106.5, almost a 9-point difference between first and second. Like, I thought OKC was going to be good, probably lead the West. I didn't expect it to be to that extent of dominance that they had, especially to start the year. And the Warriors, I thought that they could do really well this season, but I thought it was going to have to be on the back of Kuminga, who I personally am not the biggest believer in when it comes to
Right.
becoming a star. But they've done it with Buddy Hield, who's not going to shoot 50% from three, but he's going to shoot a lot of threes. He's going to knock them down, and they're playing 12 guys. It's like polar opposite of the Kings almost in a way, but you're seeing 11 to 13 guys play every single night, and DeAnthony Melton and some of their depth pieces, slow-mo coming in there and making a little bit of a difference, but nothing too crazy. I guess on the bad end, quote unquote, like I thought New Orleans would be a little bit better, but there was always a lot of variance in my mind there.
Yeah, and I'm going to point out too, like we talk about the Warriors, they beat the Blazers, the Jazz, they lost to the Clippers, they beat the Pelicans twice, they beat the Rockets, they beat the Wizards, and then I'd say the only quality win You could maybe give the Rockets a quality win, and that was overtime. But the only real quality win is Boston, and that's the one that kind of stands out. And Jaylen Brown wasn't there, but I'm not. Oh, and Porzingis wasn't there, but I'm not going to really, like that's a good quality win, especially on the road. But then the games they've lost, the Clippers, they've lost to the Cavs. Like, okay, I'm impressed that they're playing defense, and I'm impressed that Steve Kerr is like, he's running so many dudes out there. It's like he's gone full Hubie Brown. But overall, I don't think that team. I don't expect that to hold up throughout the entire season, where they're going to be a top tier team. I would be surprised if that's the way it continued.
The other one for me is I haven't been overly impressed, even though, I mean, they got the same record as the Kings, but it does feel a little bit differently. I haven't loved what I've seen from the Mavericks. I don't know if you guys watched anything of them, but that's one where they just don't look like what I expected.
Yeah, that and Luka's banged up. He's averaging 6 points a game, less than what he did last year. PJ Washington hasn't particularly played well at all after his big run. Lively's come back down to earth a little bit, although I still think he's impactful. And Klay Thompson has kind of just been okay, nothing special. So, yeah, I'm with you, Dallas. I'm not super impressed with Dallas. Yeah, I think, but at the same time, if we're going to say, hey, the Kings need time to grow and figure out how
Right.
to integrate a piece and all that stuff, I think integrating Klay Thompson into a lineup filled with, great ball handling and all that stuff is much easier than integrating DeMar DeRozan into a lineup. Basically they had a Klay Thompson type player in Hardaway. Just to Clay's a better, has a better proven track record. So yeah, I don't think that they should have had that much of a drag there. And now Luke is banged up. So we'll see how that impacts everything.
The East one I've loved, though, is the Pistons, for what it's worth. You mentioned Tim Hardaway, and it made me think of it. He's shooting well there. Tobias Harris, you got a shooter. You got he was just a warrior. I'm drawing a blank on his name. Or no, he wasn't a warrior. Malik Beasley over there
yeah.
as well. Joe Harris still sitting on their bench, and Cade Cunningham is balling out of his mind. I have been trying to stand my ground on thinking that Cade Cunningham is still a borderline top tier star in this league eventually, and he's looking good. I'm glad that, I don't know how I've seen the number, but I forget the difference in how long it took him to get 4 wins last year compared to the 4 and 6 they're sitting at right now. But he deserves to be that shit 2 years in a row. So good for them.
Yeah, Jaden Ivey's been really good too. Jaden Ivey's averaging 19.6 per game. He's shooting 40% from three. He's actually been, their second best player, but in a lot of times, I think he's been, even better than that in a few of the games. And Cade Cunningham doesn't have a jacked up pinky, and he's averaging 4.8 turnovers per game. So De'Aaron Fox is just fine. He's just fine.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to final thoughts. What do we got? Brenden, final thoughts?
Always a lot going on over
nothing.
on my end. Yeah. I'm going to stick true to brand, Sean. I got nothing going on. I'm going to watch some true crime show after this.
Make sure inhaler's nearby. And
inhaler, yeah, that has been in my pocket since the day of that game. Not going to lie.
How many do you have?
Well, okay, so the issue is that my preventative one had ran out like the day or two before, and my work is currently like we're moving insurances, and there was a slight delay before getting I had like reached my cap of refills. So my preventative one had ran out, and I have my rescue inhaler. So I have two but I only have one now.
Let's get into this. Are you using a nebulizer or
I have a nebulizer currently on me, yes.
Okay. So you need to be doing your treatments here. Come on, man.
That is the plan. Wow. Yeah. I could do that throughout the next entire business of basketball if you guys wanted.
It's funny. I will tell you that, yeah, I don't think anyone would believe it was a nebulizer, but I'll tell you, like, my dad has COPD, and we had to help clean up his house one day. I probably found 30 inhalers on the floor. So some of them still in the box,
have a lot of old ones.
Not.
When I went to look in my car for my new one, I found a bunch of old ones, which is a fun one.
Yeah,
like, gosh.
What's like an appropriate amount of inhalers to have in not I don't know about possession, but like in a house, car, like in your how many you would have, I guess.
I would say, like, in an ideal world, I guess we're talking, one at home, one in my bag, and one in my car.
Yeah. One in a box, one in your pocket. Like one in a box, still, a new one, like a
Yeah.
backup. Yeah.
I'm concerned,
Random.
man. If we're around you and all of a sudden you go into one of these, like, what do we do? Just call 911? Do we just?
Get them
No,
a
I
brown
mean,
paper bag.
I recognize it way more than I did now. Obviously, the other day, maybe not the greatest example of that, but I knew if I didn't get better by a point, I was going to have to leave, and I would have got out of there.
You should have gone home.
We
Yeah,
should just
That is,
yell too. Does
I'd have
anyone
got a
have an
food stamp.
inhaler? And someone will have an
Well,
inhaler.
nobody did. Like, for what it's worth, anybody, you need an inhaler, go to one. Do not go to first aid. They're not going to give you an inhaler, which makes
Yeah.
sense. But
that
All right.
yeah, nobody can
liability and all
share an
that.
inhaler with everybody in the building. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I get it.
Random.
But yeah, that's all I got.
That's all I got. Sean, what do you got? Final thoughts?
Oh, final thoughts. Yeah, I have to go sad because I was absolutely floored and rocked yesterday with the passing of Brian Wheeler, longtime Blazers play-by-play, who spent a long time here in Sacramento. Just one of the most great personalities, just a big teddy bear, man. He was one of the best. Wheels After Work was a program on 1140 back in the day that when I first got to that radio station, he was there. I was in high school and just gonna miss him a ton. He hadn't been doing well, so yeah, he passed just before I mean, literally yesterday. So yeah, rest in peace. All the positive thoughts out to his family and friends, and there's a lot of them here in Sacramento. So he is people. I know Kings fans will remember him from what he did not only on the Kings broadcast but the Monarchs broadcasts, and he was at 1140 in the right before the things got really going in the heyday. Right before he went on to become the Blazers play-by-play. His lifelong dream was to be a Lakers play-by-play guy. He was a finalist twice. But Blazers is where he made his mark, and I had actually retweeted somebody put his final call. It was literally that Dame Lillard buzzer beater 5 years ago where he waved bye-bye to the other team. I mean, that was just awesome. So yeah, we're gonna miss your Wheels.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't think I'd ever had a conversation with him. I think I met him once up in Portland. But yeah, everyone around here all the radio guys are really heartbroken, from Gary Gerald all the way, all of our friends, Jason Ross, Scott Marsh.
Yeah.
Sad day, sad day. It always seemed like a nice guy. So let's see, final thoughts.
Looks out the
I
window, ponders life for a
I don't
moment, looks
have a
up.
lot
No.
like basketball season's here. It's crazy. It's chaotic. Like running around like a chicken with my head cut off. Just too much going on. We do have me and Kyle will be at Sky River for a hangout on Monday morning. We're gonna do the show live from Sky River. So if anyone wants to come in.
Oh, Brennan's still here. We just lost James
That
Horn.
close.
Maybe the powers that be don't want to see anybody at Sky River for that show. Speaking of Sky River, though, Brennan, I don't know if you saw this. Their ownership.
Stupid internet.
Okay, you're back. I'll get to that story in a second. James, go ahead and finish what you were saying. We lost you about right as you were setting up your live broadcast.
Yeah, if anyone's off on Monday and wants to come hang out, Kyle and I will be over at 32 Brews doing our show live from 10 to noon on Monday. And I'm sure you're bringing up, Sean, that this is the same people who just bought the Republic and are going to build a new stadium in the rail yards for the Sac Republic. And that's some of the biggest news here in Sacramento that, they finally found their whale.
Not only that, it's amazing because it's the Wilton Rancheria, the tribal nation of Wilton Rancheria. It's the only tribal nation within Sacramento County, and they're taking. I mean, they got some deep pockets, man. These people are sports fanatics. Got to meet Jesus Tarango Jr. He's the face of the Wilton Rancheria tribal nation, and they're big Niner fans or big Kings fans. They're become soccer fans, and they're going to let the soccer people do what they do, help build this stadium. It comes down to a term sheet that will be probably unanimously, fingers crossed, approved by city council. They'll buy that land, build the stadium, and then that whole rail yards is about to just be completely developed. Talking housing, restaurants, bars, nightlife. They've got a music venue called the Paint Shop coming in there. It's going to be spectacular. And James, I mean, Brennan's relatively still new to Sacramento. That has been a absolute eyesore in Sacramento for such a long time, a blight. And to finally have something that's being done to develop it and make it into some sort of destination is going to be outstanding. So, and if I'm not mistaken, people go down to Sky River Casino, James and Kyle are promising to buy your first drink. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I'm not buying anyone drinks.
Okay.
You can come and buy James a drink because I'll be there.
Yeah,
I'll be there hanging out. Yeah,
James, you cut out when you said it, so we weren't.
Yeah, I thought that had come through. We got to check the tape, but
yeah.
At any rate.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to go down there and check it out again. I've been down there for one other show, for a D-Lo and KC show, but yeah, I mean, this is the most exciting thing because now you're gonna have this crazy little district there where the A's and River Cats will be on the other side of the river, but right there, you've got Golden One, and then it kind of like makes this little triangle of entertainment in downtown. It should be absolutely tremendous for the city of Sacramento. That it's been such a blight on the community forever. And for years, it was a toxic waste dump. And because it's a rail yard, so even like the railroad ties that you keep stacked up, for years and years, they're soaked in kerosene, and that kerosene gets into the groundwater, and it gets into the ground. So that whole entire area had to be cleaned up before they could actually, build something and do something. But now the infrastructure is there, and it's primed and ready for something amazing to happen. And this should be really, really cool. And maybe it leads to MLS, maybe it doesn't. But we're talking about a 12,000 seat stadium that will be expandable to over 20,000 seats, and that's just tremendous. So and on top of that, there's a ton going on at over at Sutter Health Field too. They're doing a ton of work right now over there to try to get that ready for Major League Baseball next year. Someone showed a drone coverage flying over it the other day, and it was like, holy cow. I mean, they've ripped a ton of stuff up, and they're doing their best to make that into a major league park, at least for the short term. So it's not going to be easy, but they'll do their best. So when the A's move there and are there for 3 years, maybe they put their best foot forward and we get Major League Baseball here too. So
maybe. Just to close this book on that real quick about the soccer thing. What's really cool too about that ownership, they're local. I mean, they've been in Sacramento longer than anybody, really.
Mm-hmm.
Their ties obviously being natives of this land, and to be able to do this locally, but also they're not investing that it's contingent upon MLS. If they never go MLS, they're still investing in that club and in that stadium. So that to me is incredible because you've had several billionaires with a B look at this organization and go, yeah, I'd like to invest contingent upon getting MLS. And I think that's what's really special about what happened this past week. And I don't think they're done. I think there's going to be some other stuff that pop up here with that development, and maybe even a little bit towards the river here in the next week or two. So
sweet,
exciting times with the downtown Sacramento area.
Yeah, I expect some major things out by their casino too in the Elk Grove area.
They're expanding already. Yeah,
a giant hotel, a giant swimming pool, and some talk like that. They have a huge swath of land there that there might be some other soccer development there for youth sports, which I don't. Elk Grove is the second, if I'm not mistaken, the second largest school district in California behind LA County. And it's a huge, huge, huge soccer community. I know that from playing with my sons played. We'd go down there. There's just like massive, massive soccer community. So lots of good stuff happening. Cool. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Thanks for tuning in to the King's Beat podcast. Make sure to give us a thumbs up if you're still watching. Give us a rating, review, jump on board with the King's Beat, go to thekingsbeat.com. We haven't forgotten about doing off the records. It's just been like really chaotic. I got to be honest.
Okay.
Like not even the in-person thing, like just overall, like it's been super chaotic. I haven't been able to get guests lined up to do an off the record, but we will in the very near future. And I'll look around. We maybe you guys can help me. There's a guest that I want to get, but it's going to take a little bit of convincing, and I think he'd be an intriguing guest. So we'll see if we can get him out to say yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Just think that there's not that many people who haven't been on the podcast. But I mean, on the off the record, but let's see if we can get one of our other local reporters in here for an off the record. So,
it's a reporter?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Hey, man, we get good stories. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, for Box 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the King's Pulse podcast, I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320, the King's Beat. We'll see you very, very soon.